Good morning, dear children. Now we have completed with our first chapter of literature, and now we are going to start second chapter in literature. It is actually like a diary entry. The topic of diary entry is already learnt by you in Mithun sir's video. Diary entry is one of the most personal and informal categories of writing. A diary writing can be based on an experience, a scene, or you can say description or narration of certain event or any other thing or activity that the writer considers worth writing in his personal diary. Before the age of Twitter and Facebook, the best way to keep track of your life was through a diary or journal. For most, a diary is a place of private introspection where one can transfer thoughts and feelings onto paper. So we have also many famous diaries with us, like many famous personalities wrote their ideas in the form of diaries or journals, like Thomas Alva Edison, Einstein, Marie Curie. Even from India, if we say Gandhiji and Bhagat Singh. This is chapter 2. We are going to start Ode to My Fountain Pen in the memoir. It's written by Anne Frank. She is the Jewish girl, and early in the Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler, Anne's father, Otto Frank, a German businessman, took his wife and two of his daughters to live in Amsterdam. From 1942 to 1944, Nazi occupied Amsterdam. For 13 years old German Jewish girl had to confine herself in an attic. She was just living herself she was living in a factory with her sister and with family. They had to hide themselves. And her parents, three members of another family also, they were also living in the same attic, and they had to actually keep themselves in a way that no one comes to know that they are living here. Otherwise they would be caught and they would be sent to concentration camp run by Hitler, where they were operated. So this is the time when Anne Frank had written the diary and where she had expressed her emotions and experiences and everything. So here one of the incident is described here in the diary on which she has written here is when she was 13th year old. So on her 13th birthday she got the diary as a present from her father. So she was very happy to have it, and she named the diary as Kitty. And addressing diary as Kitty, she started imagining a character named Kitty, and addressing Kitty, she started writing in the diary. It's a very famous book, the Diary of a Young Girl. From that, this part, our chapter, the second chapter, it is taken out. So let us learn. Anneliese Mary Frank. She was born in 1929 and she died at the very young age of 15 years only in 1945. She was born in a Jewish family in Frankfurt, Germany. When the Nazis gained control over Germany, Nazis were the forces of Adolf Hitler. And during World War II, these Nazis had actually killed Europe's Jewish population. Nazis had killed 6 million Jews in Europe, which is equal to 2/3 of the total number of Jews in the world. Anne's family moved to Amsterdam for fear of being persecuted, and wherever they find Jewish people, they just caught them and sent in the concentration camp. And there in concentration camp, those people were made to work as slaves before they were killed, so that the Germans, the Nazis, could benefit as much as possible from their labor. And to implement this scheme, the German established huge concentration camp, or we can say death camps, throughout the Europe. And Jews and other people were sent there in cattle trains. And upon arrival, their heads were shaved and their arms were tattooed with numbers. In addition, they were stripped of their clothes and whatever possessions they still had. And they were subjected to the strictest discipline and the most inhuman conditions before they were killed. The diary became a classic of war literature. In July 1942, the family had to go into the hiding. They lived in hiding till August 1944. And Frank lives in hiding in an attic of an apartment, which is a consignment factory, with her sister, her parents, and 3 members of another family also, and an old dentist. Along more than 2 years, she wrote in her diary her feelings and her experience, her relationship with the other dwellers, and they kept themselves concealed behind a hidden door, which no one can see that behind this door someone is living. There is an apartment where the family is living. So this kind of hidden door was there, and a bookcase was also there. So no one had the doubt that some Jewish people are living in this warehouse. And during the day, when people worked in the office and in the warehouse below, Annie and the others had to keep very quiet. They have to remain very silent without making noise. But at night, they could move and around more freely, though of course they could not turn on any lights nor show in any way that the house was inhabited by the people. Despite all such efforts, they could not keep themselves hidden any longer. Fortune did not favor them and they were caught. And in October or November 1944, Annie and her sister Margaret, they were transferred to a concentration camp, and where they died probably a few months later. Anne Frank did not survive the concentration camps to which she was sent after her little group was discovered. They were caught by the Nazis, and of all the 8 people who hid in the secret annex in Amsterdam, in that factory they were living, they were hiding themselves. Out of all those 8 people, only Anne's father survived. And when he came back, when the war was over, so he found the pages of Anne's diary, which the Nazis left scattered on the floor when they arrested the group in hiding. Those pages were kept by the 2 young women who had worked in the office and had faithfully supplied the little group with food and other provisions. Those 2 ladies who were been helpful to them at that time. And Anne's father put his effort to get the diary published, and now as we can see that it has become the classic wartime literature during World War II. During this period, Annie wrote in Dutch in her diary, and later it was translated in English. She penned down her thoughts, feelings, and fears. The diary was published after the war in 1947. Before we start the chapter, let us watch a very interesting animation video about Anne Frank, and let us know who she was and what kind of suffering she had gone through.
Anne Frank is born in 1929 in Germany. Her parents are Otto and Edith, and she has one sister, Margot. The Frank family is Jewish. The economic crisis is causing a lot of social unrest in Germany, resulting in the rise of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party. In 1933, the Nazis come into power and discrimination against the Jews increases. Otto and Edith worry about the rise of the Nazi Party. They decide to move to the Netherlands. Margot and Anne also arrive in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, Anne attends the Montessori school. Her 2 best friends are Sanne and Hammerly. But then, in May 1940, the German army invades the Netherlands. The Nazis occupy large parts of Europe and start to discriminate against Jews everywhere. Anne and Margot have to switch to separate Jewish schools. One restriction is followed by another. For her 13th birthday, Anne receives a diary. This diary will become very important to her. Suddenly, on the 5th of July 1942, a letter arrives ordering Margot to leave for a Nazi labor camp. Otto and Edith have made secret preparations to go into hiding. Where will we go into hiding, Anne wonders. One of the first things she packs is her diary. Wearing as many clothes as possible, the Frank family leave their house. The hiding place is the annex at the office of Anne's father. Otto and Anne tidy up the annex. Anne brightens up her room by sticking images to the wall. The people in hiding are helped by Victor Kugler, Johannes Kleiman, Miep Gies and Beb Voskuil, who all work in Otto's company. The Frank family is soon joined by 3 other people, Herman and August van Pels and their son Peter. Anne also welcomes Fritz Pfeffer. Fritz brings bad news, all those deportations. In her diary, Anne writes about life in the annex, about the arguments, which can be fierce, particularly between her and her mother. And also with Fritz, there are never-ending disagreements. Anne writes of her nightmares and the fear of all in the annex to be discovered. On the 4th of August, something terrible happens. They have been betrayed. They are arrested.
They were sent to concentration camp where the 2 daughters, Annie and Margaret, could not survive any longer. They just, after 2 years, they died. And the only person who survived was her father, Otto Frank, who came back after the Britishers relieved from the concentration camp. And when he came back home, he could find no one. He was so much frustrated, and the diary pages were scattered on the floor. So later on, in 1947, he published his daughter's diary. So in the next video, we will go through the chapter explanation, that is Diary of Anne Frank, one of the chapter of her diaries, Ode to My Fountain Pen. Thank you.